What's up, everybody? Morning, morning. At least this morning where I'm at. Not sure about you. What's up, Kate? Um, I want to make this just super chill and just kind of getting the character prepped for the DLC, and just kind of lore chatting our way through it. Love to hear you guys' thoughts and takes on things. The character that I'm gonna create is gonna all be about like blasphemy and stuff like that, and do a lot of dragon incantations and arcane stuff. So I think it's fitting for the DLC. that is a tough that is a tough fight. Yeah, kind of like a Mesmer build. Yeah, kind of. So notice that she's wearing the same thing, um, as in the Mesmer baby statue. I think it's really important. And as I've talked about in my, sorry, I am not very good with the mic. And as I've talked about in my last video, um, she seems to be mourning something. I think that there's enough evidence uh, to assume that like that she seems to be in mourning of something, and the fact that she is wearing the same dress while holding Mesmer, assuming that's Mesmer in that statue. I think it's pretty important, and I think it might not directly tie to why she shattered the Elden Ring, but there seems to be a connection between what she's wearing and the only thing that they show us, and the the statue with Mesmer. Yeah, getting arguments with my friends. Yep. Yeah, this lore will do it to you. It can bring a community together, and it can also like fracture it. Um, do you think there's a chance Mesmer's flame is all of the different flames currently in the lands between merged? I've been considering that. It's definitely possible. Definitely possible. Like his, I mean, the way that I understand it is it's the crucible, um, and it's kind of where everything was once together and blended, and the only thing left there now is kind of like the outcast and repressed. I've never noticed that he had dragon scales on him, like on his chest. It's also like, just take notice of like everything that has blonde hair has basically the same hair. Like Fia, Marika, Miquella, which again, I know that like it seems like the mainstream is starting to circle around like, well, maybe America is everybody. Like, there's too many things that are kind of a coincidence that it's like, um, and another thing I think that would be fun to look at is kind of dissect for sure, like try to get a better idea is okay, is this actually happening in her psyche, in America's psyche, right? Like when we cross the fog, like are we coming into her consciousness, or is this like this cutscene, for instance? Like, are we in a literal place, or are we just kind of a figment of her psyche that is start like entering into her world? Um, because right now that's kind of it's a big. I don't want to say it's a turnoff for people about my theory, but it seems to be a big thing for people to uh, and I think this is really important too. Um, it seems to be a big. Wow, that's really dark. Is it dark for you guys? Kind of. Whoops. Maybe not. Maybe just my screen. Um. So trying to decide, is this just a projection of her psyche, or are we literally in her psyche? And not that it really makes that big of a difference. I really don't think it does. I think it's one and the same. Um, but one reason I think it is because just of the Great Runes, and it seems like the Great Runes are definitely they belong to Marika, um, and like in that cutscene and in like the kind of teaser trailer for the base game, it says that the demigods were tainted with the strength of the Great Runes, and to me that just means like they were kind of possessed by them, and I don't know. It seems like they're very singularly from Marika herself. Again, the way that you could think about that is if it's a projection, then she would actually have had birthed these demigod children. Totally cool. And her inner world, her psyche, the Elden Ring, her personality, once it fractured and each one got a fragment of it, it was so strong. It's like if you have the same song repeating in your head over and over and over again. It's kind of like it's very consuming and possessive. And if you have like the thought of like blasphemy over and over and over again, like they must have been so strong that they could take over the will of the demigod children, but they come from Marika herself. So it's kind of like like a projection of her personality, if you will. Um, I've never noticed, and it might not be, but let's just say that everything that comes to the lands between seems, in my theory, seems to be like birthed from America's consciousness. Um, and I find it interesting that here we find a statue of a woman kind of touching her belly and then basically like sending us on our way, almost like we are birthed from this and we are entering into this world. Um, Interesting. Um, yeah, for sure, Jack. You think America is everyone? I thought about that too. Yeah, I don't. I don't want to put the blanket statement over America is everybody. Oh God, I haven't played this in a while. I'm gonna be jumping all over the place. Um, I think it's really interesting to me that most of the major female characters have very similar features to Marika. Same hair, same face style, and even Miquella seems to just be like a mini version of Marika. And I've talked about like Miquella to me is the rebirth of Marika. Like it's the new version of her previous self. And it seems like this game is akin to rebirth and transformation, and I mean the different NPC quest lines, chrysalids, and the fact that Melania turns into a butterfly, quote unquote. Like she, after her third time, she transforms into a goddess, and Miquella trying to start a new order, a new tree. Like they seem to just be like actions that Marika is taking to kind of self-correct the situation that she's found herself in. And another thing that we'll get to later is I if you take the map to be fetus in a womb, which I definitely do, the place where the Haligtree is at is coming out of the head. It's like it's Marika's new consciousness. It's her new way of thinking. But it doesn't work because now we know that she has yet to do one last thing, which is to confront the shadow. But again, like I find it interesting that you could have put the Haligtree anywhere, right? But they put it coming out of the base or out of the skull of the infant as a kind of nod to like this is where this is taking place. It's a new way of thinking. And then I also saw that there was a sorry, I'll get into it in a second. It's just rambling right now. But maybe in a different way than you're stating. Yeah, it absolutely could be. Yep. What build are we doing? We're doing like basically everything like blasphemous and heretical. Kind of a Mesmer build. So super quick, I wanted to talk about. So this statue is everywhere, right? And it's often coupled with a statue of a spear that is going up. And to me, they very much resemble like Mesmer has kind of that one down, one up, and they're separated. And this down one looks very similar to the Rune of Death, and the up one with the spear that you see in the Round Table Hold looks like Marika's rune. And then we see in the trailer, we see a statue of Marika with her head cut off, which I think is again really interesting. And then one thing that I was watching Cosmos live stream, and somebody on his comment section said if you invert the shadow tree 90 degrees, it looks like a eye with like the optical cord or optic nerve coming out of it, which I thought was really really cool. Like it's like behind Marika's eye, like it's a blind spot in her eye. But
Don't worry, Torrent. Fortune is on his side. We found him here, after all.
I'm really interested to see what her role is in the DLC.
Is sure to seek the Elden Ring.
In my theory, you could say like the way that I would see Melina at the end of the DLC would be that she would kind of be like the ruler. Um, so Melina represents the self and psychology, which is the same thing as the Crucible. It's like where everything is blended, everything is balanced and in unity, and it's our quote unquote inner God. It's everything, all our totality of our psyche and personality, all held together within one vessel. Um, and I find it interesting that Marika is in the Erd tree here, and I am assuming, could be absolutely wrong, that the Glowmite Queen is in the Shadow tree. And I have a feeling that what Miquella is doing is he's uniting these two things together. And I really wonder if Melina, once that happens, if like both of her eyes will open, if like the totality of everything that she's supposed to be, nothing will be repressed, nothing is hidden away, and she is kind of like America's inner god and will act as the god of this united world, which again would have been what it was before the war in the Shadowlands. Like Melina, I think is a big key to um, a big key to the story that hopefully will be talked about more in the DLC. Would you say then that the underground ancient civilizations could be considered generational trauma or something akin to that? Yeah. So I think so there's in psychology there is a personal unconscious, a collective unconscious, and then there's like a personal shadow and a collective shadow. And America's personal shadow is the Glowmite Queen. It's just the antithesis of her. You know, she's about life and like giving birth, and the Glowmite Queen is the opposite of that. The Erd Tree, the lands, not even the lands between, but the Erd Tree, the capital, Lindell, is the collective like ego consciousness, right? It's everything that society deems accepted and wanted. And then the shadow of that would be everything that society as a collective, the collective shadow, would cast away. And then the collective unconscious is basically like our ancestral um, carbon footprint almost. It's like it's things that are harbored within each and every one of our psyches, very deep down, that explains basically how we got to where we're at, why we're doing the things that we're doing. That is like innate in every single person. So the way I see like the eternal cities and the ancient civilizations is it's like it's telling a story of how we got to this place, right? The different fractures, the different branches, things that happen to get us to the lands between Lindell, the capital, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's necessarily trauma, but I think it's just kind of like different forks in the road that got us to where we're at. So by your interpretation of the lore, the ending of the DLC would see us confronting the Glowmite Queen as Marika's inner shadow. But what about Radagun? What is he, Animus? Yeah, so the way that I see the ending of the DLC happening is that, right, Marika is going down there to finally confront her shadow. She needs Miquella to help her do this. That's kind of like his whole role. Um, and then after that, and we can see this in his in the last cutscene. Oh my god, I'm gonna be jumping and that he is healing the shadow tree, right? Like, and I said I am making a prediction that the two trees will be one. Like the shadow tree will stay black and the Erd tree will stay golden, but they'll unite. They'll kind of wrap around each other, just like what was the Halleck tree was trying to do. And the kind of personification of that would be, yes, Marika and the Glowmite Queen, the persona and the shadow, then would unite and they would become one vessel, harmonized together. But what about Radagon? What is he animus? Yeah, so there's 4 different stages of the process of individuation. 3 of them take place in the base game, which is what we see Melina. Once we get to her cutscene, we'll be able to get a better. But she has strawberry blonde hair, which is the anima and animus together, Marika and Radagon. Then she has one golden eye, which is, you know, basically the totality of ego consciousness, which you could say is Godwin. That's kind of how I interpret it. But she still has one eye shut. And we know that one eye to be the Glomite Queen, kind of the beast eye, the shadow eye. So the other 3 processes took place when Radagon and Marika became one person. That was their union, right? Like if Melina was just a blank canvas, at that instance, her hair would have changed, let's say, from black to strawberry blonde. When Godwin the Golden died, one of her eyes, let's just say her eyes were black as well, one of her eyes would have turned gold. But because there's still a repression of the shadow, and it's hidden away and locked, just like her eyes closed, and if the visual of the shadow tree in the trailer is, supposed to be an eye with an optic nerve, you could say like that is the beast eye. So Radagon is a super important process step in this process, but in my opinion, his journey is done. I would be surprised if we see him. I mean, he might be mentioned, right? But I don't think that like he will necessarily be a part of the DLC story. Have you challenged yourself to identify each player in the lore and their dynamics in relation to other characters as particular psychological facets for Marika? For example, Miquella is reborn after perhaps healing from trauma. What is Ronnie? Her self-sabotage? Yeah. Or ooh. How do you explain characters like Hugh? No, you're good. So I think that this is important. So when Marika gives birth to something, right? I think that those are aspects of her psyche. So basically, her demigod children and stepchildren would be aspects of her personal psyche. So yeah, just like you're saying, like to me, Miquella is the rebirth of Marika's like ego almost. It's like the rebirth of her person. And then Ronnie, right, would be like kind of like self-sabotage. Again, I am of the mind that Ronnie just kind of represents like nihilism and almost like letting go, like giving up in a sense. Radon would be everything that she resists, like the resistance to change. So I think like Latina doesn't necessarily have a psychological component like the demigods do. I think that she is part of the world building process in the psyche, or the projection of it, if you will. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen Inception, but if you have, it's not like the only people down there are the characters of the movie. Like, it's a whole world that is being built by the consciousness of the dreamer, right? Like, just like in Bloodborne, like it's clearly a dream world, but it's an entire place, and it's filled not only with like major characters, but also just random characters as well, because that is your inner world is full of both these big, huge ideas and concepts, as well as just everyday living. And I think that that's what's happening with like a lot of them. Um, um, Goodbye. But it something that we should try and do while we're playing. God dang it! I'm gonna hit jump so many times in this playthrough. And I've kind of given my interpretation of the lands between as like this in between world of um, between like the ego and the shadow, right? Like, or the ego self axis is one that I use a lot, and it's basically like the, if you're going to think about it in like mythology, it would be the place where above us would be like all gods, right? And everything deemed acceptable and cherished, what I see as like Lindell, the capital, the Erd Tree, all that kind of stuff. And then below us is everything that is the opposite of that, everything that's repressed in the shadow. And the lands between seems to be like this place literally in between those two realms, kind of where the Venn diagram bleeds into one another, which is why like in one you see a turtle, which is totally normal, and then you look over there and you see like some crazy bats, and then you see these really weird creatures, and then dragons, but also rabbits and like very normal looking people, and then also giants, and so these two worlds are just blending into each other. There's literally a place in between these two worlds. Why would some characters like demigods be significant to her psyche, but others like Latenna are just filler? But there is such a meaningful story being told with Latenna. Um, yeah, but I think like um, how do I explain this? So pre-fracturing, right? Um, oh man, I don't really know how to explain this in like a concise, meaningful way. Um, and I agree with you. I think that the stories of the Albinaurics, like all this different stuff is very, very important, and it has major lore implications. I think that they are more important to, they're less important to Marika as a person than they are to kind of the fractured version of Marika, if that makes any sense. Can I parry this person? Yep. I mean, if even if um, this is not taking place in her psyche, like the world, just in a world sense, the demigods are more important than Latenna. Um, so whether it's, like I'm saying, whether it's in her psyche or it's a projection of it, there is definitely importance placed more on certain people than others. Again, not trying to diminish their roles, especially in a lore sense, but that's just kind of the reality of it, I guess. I think this aspect of your theory is why I have a hard time accepting that it's overarching theory as opposed to perhaps a skeletal structure to the storytelling. Um, yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear your take on Latina. Um, and again, I mean, this is why this is kind of the whole purpose of these playthroughs, right? Is to talk and kind of refine things and to see what makes sense collectively, because this is just the way I see things. Um, I don't think that the psychological reading of the story is that satisfying, but if you combine it with the more traditional and direct interpretation of the lore, it makes so much sense. Yeah, I think so too. And again, like it's difficult for me um, because I don't think that this is 100% like a psychological story. But because I only have so much time to get my theory out there and for it to grab people's attention, that's kind of what I hang my hat on, right? And then this, the more live stream, like just chilling, talking kind of way, is like how you can bring psychological elements to the story, right? So maybe, I mean, that would be a really good idea for this playthrough, is to take the base game, right? The lore of the base game, which I think is very tough anyways because it doesn't seem like anybody really understands it, and then applying the psychological blueprint over it. Um, I just want to better understand the way you see things. Um, but I think the characters like Latina and what your theory. Yeah, no. And I'm probably just saying it wrong. Um, like I look at everything through the lens of America, right? Like to me, it's a story of America, and it's the things that seem most directly connected to America, right? Are like the demigod children. Thanks, Jack. Take care, dude.
Greetings, traveller from beyond the fog. I am Melina. I offer you an accord. Have you heard of the Finger Maidens? They serve the Two Fingers, offering guidance and aid to the tarnished. But you, I am afraid, are maidenless. I can play the role of
Somebody had a really cool. I forget who it was in one of my comments. Um, they said that like the reason that Torrent chooses us is because we have like a kind of like a small fragment of Miquella, like through the process of being reborn and stuff like that. We have a tiny fragment or like the essence of Miquella, which I thought was a really cool kind of interpretation of it. But so again, like for funsies, let's just say, okay, so now we have this person that is spectral, that like kind of came out of nowhere and needs to get back to the foot of the Erd tree, but has no idea. Strawberry blonde hair, one golden eye, the other one is closed. Now, in again in the psychological sense, like this screams to me the self, but the self that is still being that the shadow is still being repressed in, right? And it explains so much of her story that like she's lost, doesn't really know what's going on. She's lost her purpose. All she knows is she needs to get to the base of the foot of the Erd tree, which could also mean like the shadow, right? If the shadow lands are some people have said that they're the roots. Maybe that's where she's trying to get to, and maybe that person in the beginning cutscene is her. I know it's not the same exact like clothing that she's wearing there, but that could also just to like throw us off. Oh. Plus, Miyazaki loves his psychological metaphors. I think he even confirmed that in one of his interviews. Yeah. I mean, they're everywhere in like all of his games. Um, do you think the enemy knights we see in the DLC trailer could be old soldiers of Marika from the war in the Land of Shadow, considering the black and gold motif of their armor matching her dress? Which knights are those? I don't know that I can recall that. Hey, Jason. Appreciate that, man. Thank you. Meaning to ask, how did you come to find the link between Elden Ring and Young? Yeah, it's a funny story actually. Well, not funny, but so I had no idea who Carl Jung was. I was very interested in human psychology, but just in like a personal level. I always find it really interesting the way people think. So I've always kind of gravitated towards it, but I'd definitely not like a researcher of it or anything like that. Just a general interest of mine. I have been playing Miyazaki's games since Demon Souls, and just it's really the only games I play. I feel like all the other games just when stacked up to it just are so lackluster. I mean, there's definitely fun games out there, but nothing quite pulls at me the same way that FromSoft games, specifically like the Soulsborne games, are. And I've always wanted to to kind of come up with my own theory on lore, like even back in Dark Souls days. But I never really had the courage to do it, and I always felt like the people that are doing it now are doing a good job. Why bother? Like, and for some reason, Elden Ring kind of changed my mind, and I really, really wanted to take a deep dive into it. So I just started doing research on my own, and one of the things that I was researching was like the Great Runes, and I just put in a Google search of like runes and psychology or something like that, and the very first video I watched was called, oh man, Runes of the Unconscious, Carl Jung's Red and Black books, and it's like it's basically a story very similar to Elden Ring. Sorry about that. That was probably super annoying. Where he's kind of lost his way, and he's like having a conversation with himself. In these conversations, you know, he meets characters along the way, and like, but one really interesting thing that he does throughout this process is he he has this notepad next to him, and he literally just, as he's kind of going through this exercise, starts kind of scribbling these runes down, which he called the language of the unconscious. They're very unique. You know, they're nothing like any other language that has ever been seen before, and they tell like an entire story. And he has to have this character in his conscious or unconscious, I guess, explain to him what he is writing down. Super deep, like mind-bending stuff. But a very common theme in all of Miyazaki's stories is there is these runes that are the language of the gods, and that nobody can transcribe except for like either one person or, like in our case, the two fingers. And it just, for some reason, like it very much clicked into my mind of like, okay, so for example, like in Bloodborne, there's Karo runes, and they are just scribbles of runes from the Great Ones that give bonuses to your character, but nobody can understand what they are, and you put them. The way that you activate them is you go to a memory altar and you kind of like shove them into your brain. So they're very much like runes of the unconscious. And they are transcribed by this Bergenworth scholar named Carol. And he's the only person that can do it. And, you know, Jung at this time when he was doing this was a student of Freud's, and he was the only person that could transcribe his runes, and his name is Carl. Like, there's just so many parallels and similarities that was kind of the initial thread that I pulled on. And every time I look up something about Carl Jung, seems to be definitely in Elden Ring, and if not in like most of Miyazaki's creations. And really from that point on, I just kind of was very much enthralled by him, and that was the beginning of it. The one with the twin spear and the ones in the picture that look like escorting. Oh, I'll have to look more at that. That's funny, Race. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So like the way that like now whenever I hear like outer gods or like anything like that, it's like the quote unquote gods of our like unconscious, if you will. Like um, but it's just it's so hard to it's so hard to explain. At first, I thought that George R. R. Martin influence was minimal, but the more I tried to make sense of Elden Ring's lore, the more I saw how more complex it is compared to Souls and Bloodborne lore. Yeah, yeah, the Souls and Bloodborne lore. To me, Bloodborne just smacks you upside the head with psychology, um, like eyes on the inside, and trying to better ourselves and awakening and transformation and blah 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 blah. Um, and the entire story being played is, in my opinion, is because of a trauma, right? And the trying to heal from that trauma. Um, but I think if you take it really literally, which I think is kind of the downfall for. I think if you take the lore literally, it works for like Demon Souls, Sekiro, Dark Souls, But I would say there was a point somewhere in like Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne era where Miyazaki really cranked up, the psychology to 11. And I feel like since then it's been much more metaphorical, esoteric storytelling than like a straight up dark fantasy where there's gods and demons and stuff like that. I think it's a much more human story than people give credit for. I've been catching up on your videos regarding the psyche analysis for Ring, and I love it and truly hope the Glow My Queen is at the center of the Shadow Realm. What build are we? I am doing basically a Mesmere build, so I'm gonna do everything like dragon incantations, banish knight kind of thing, which actually got inspiration from Jack as a Mimic on that one. I love his like banish knight story that he's doing right now through his kind of really unique analysis of how he is like playing the game and then doing a voiceover for it. It's really cool, which is actually a really good idea because doing them both at the same time is freaking hard. um, Let me go back to. I need to. Does Kale have binoculars? Kind of forget. I found your channel yesterday and watched your last and first video. It's very interesting and comes at it from New England. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for joining. To full disclosure, that first video, um, there's a lot of things I got wrong, and I had a very kind of elementary understanding of uh, kind of the psychological lens that I look through now. I need to remake it, but I feel like it still serves its purpose right now. So one thing that Miyazaki tells us, and I forget which interview it is, but he says that Empyreans in their eyes are unique because it's it shows the duality of them. So in each Empyrean is given a shadowbound beast by the two fingers. Um, and within the shadowbound beast, it literally bounds the shadow, just like you could think of it as like the way that Moog and Morgoth are shackled to the earth, right? Like it kind of shackles the antithesis of the Empyreans in that shadow, and it's not I think a common misconception is that shadows are just bad things, right? But it's not that. It's just the opposite of whatever the ego ideal is. So, for example, Ronnie, she has a shadowbound beast, Blyde, who is actually really kind and nice and warm and talkative and friendly, which is the opposite of Ronnie. Like, and then you look at Marika, who is trying to portray herself as like this godlike, only golden, only positive things, and her shadow is this terrifying beast who is harboring her antithesis. And like I'm still of the notion that it doesn't really make sense, but that Malenia is the shadowbound beast of Miquella, and like she harbors everything else that's antithesis to him. So rot and fighting and very strong, and he's kind of the opposite of that. Now I know that they're twins and stuff like that, but I just find it weird that one of the characters that's shadowbound is named Blyde or Blade, and the only thing that Melania says is that she's the blade of Miquella. So, and she's the opposite of him, which is what the Shadowbound beasts are. So, but I think early on there seemed like everybody wanted to. Well, why is she missing an eye? And like, what's? I literally think it's just showing that there's a duality for the Empyreans that are the ego and the shadow, right? One thing that is very open and presented to the world, and one thing that is locked away and hid away and not presented to the world, but rather is in their shadowbound beast.
A pleasure to meet thee, Tarnished. I am the witch Renna. I'd heard tell of a Tarnished.
So I've been thinking maybe the best way to sum up our problem is that Jung's model, by definition, has things you cannot be certain of, and lots of the best response to that is lots of elaboration. Which sucks for videos, obviously. Yeah. It's
As I had hoped, I was entrusted this for thee, by Torrent's former master. 'Tis a bell calling forth spirits. Summon them with it. From ash and return to the
so. I'm assuming that everybody takes Torrent's former master to be Miquella, right? I think that was what the illustration of the DLC teaser was supposed to kind of convey. And if Miquella's entire goal is to get to the Shadow Realm and to heal this uh, repressed aspect of society and of America, it would make sense that he entrusted Ronnie with these kind of shadowy, unconscious things. Banished Knights are dope. Sax Knight Gale released a lore accurate build for them. Oh, cool. I think I've read maybe 15 works by Jung now, and things fit Elden Ring in such a huge quantity that it's almost double-edged sword. Yeah, yeah. Out of curiosity, Miyazaki generally has the player defeat all in front of them. Do you think Miquella, in the role you have suggested, will avoid a similar fate? Yeah, I don't. I see Miquella as being kind of like a Melina character in the DLC. I don't think he's going to be an enemy of ours. And honestly, like I wouldn't be surprised if we don't fight anything past Mesmir. I see like Mesmir as being a key to the lock that's inside, to what is inside the Shadow Tree. The only thing I could think of that we would fight, perhaps, would be the Glowmite Queen, because I think it would just be an awesome experience. Like such a cool character that is mentioned and talked about, but that we don't really interact with. But I could very much see, because we've defeated Mesmir and because we have brought Miquella finally to the Shadow Tree, like we're just gonna let him do his thing, and the fighting will be done at that point. Oh, is that right? Is Bly just wolf in Welsh? I think Malenia is substituting the role of shadow, maybe, but shadows and roots are both connected symbols. The Hallig tree is lacking roots. Yep, yep, totally agree. The nascent butterflies at the chapel of anticipation lures you to the fall where, oh, Melina and Torrent first found you. Kind of fits the conspiracy. Oh, wow. I totally missed that, dude. That's a great observation. Mm. So rays, so butterflies symbolize the anima according to Jung. So we've talked about in my Elden Lord video. There's 4 stages of the animus. So it would make sense then that there's 4 stages of the anima that would coincide with that. So I wonder if so then that fourth butterfly seems to be like a Saint Trina character, which could be the anima to Miquella. Is that how you would? Um, Hi, do you have any idea what the relation is between the Godskins and Rykard slash Radon? Um, the noble is protecting the Temple of Igle. Um, Apostle is in Radon Divine Tower protecting the Godslayer sword. Um, I mean, I think you kind of made the connection there yourself. They seem to be protecting elements of the shadow of the Glomide Queen. Um, and what's really interesting about Radon's tower is that at the heights of it, right, what is under the golden aura of the Ur tree are the 2 fingers in Radon's, great rune. Um, let's do this run and just kind of. And then what's hidden beneath it is an element of the shadow, right, at the very, very bottom of it. And I've kind of explained in my last video that the reason that you have to defeat Radon before you can access this location is because he is the bulwark that is resisting this shadow, right? He is everything that is antithesis to Marika's order and that would represent change. He is fighting against. So whether it's the fate in the stars in Ronnie's quest, or whether it's the shadow that is hidden, at the very bottom of his divine tower, like he is that element, which is again why you have to defeat him as well, and in my opinion. Um, and then I mean, as far as Radon and um, I think that Volcano Manor and Mount Gelmir and that whole area is just all about blasphemy. So, um, since Radon is the element that resists that, um, and they are opposites, Radon and Rykard are opposites of one another, and their respective divine towers are directly across from one another. Um, anything that is anything that Radon is trying to hold back would be reflected in Rykard's area, basically. which is why it's full of snakes and fire and um, the Godskin apostles and all that kind of stuff. Mesmere could be Artoris, and Glow My Queen could be Calumet. Yeah. Um, Never thought of Malenia being Miquella Shadowbound Beast. Was kind of hoping for a twin corrupted Shadowbound Beast for them both in the DLC. That would be really cool. Um, I've mentioned before that well, in the DLC prediction video, I've mentioned that we're going to see the same thing that is above the surface, right, in the lands between, but it's going to take on like a really weird, chaotic form um, in the Shadowlands. And I've said in my my live stream covering the trailer that the way that I see the um, the dragon fight, or what is that? Dragon dancer fight, or lion dancer fight in the DLC trailer is that it's a version of Moog, Morgott, and Godwyn. Like it's a weird, chaotic, soupy version of them, and the two Omen twins who are relegated to the sewers um, are literally the things propping up this golden lion, um, and the connection of that in like a psychological sense, and even in like the it's even a symbol for like the Erdtree itself. Like this golden thing, powerful, is actually being propped up by this repressed dark aspect, um, by the roots of it, by the things that are ignored. So I would not be, and I also, I think the skeleton thing that is riding a horse is a weird, shadowy version of Radon. So I would not be surprised if we see like a shadowy version of other demigods as well. Um,
This tiny golden aura is the grace of the earth. This light once shone in the eyes of your tarnished brethren, but now it is all that guides you. Also, I hear you can see them, can't you? The rays of grace that guide you through your burden.
I can see him. Hmm. So I always take the sites of grace to literally be, so Newman means spirit. So I always took these, and you can see like there's roots and kind of, it's almost like a crucible type of tree that is growing out of these little sites of grace, and we see that kind of the evolution of that with the monk type of character who is holding a golden flower, and then there's roots that are coming up from him, and then eventually, it seems that uh, this projection of a tree, or whether you think it's a real tree or not, kind of envelops them. And the spirit, whether it is it's Marika's spirit or some other spirit, it seems to be that this is what the sites of grace are. And it's literally Marika's spirit coming to, pointing us through our journey to kill her. Because we have to do that in order to move forward with the story. Um, but again, I think it's pretty interesting. Let's see here. Renala has many connections to the Glowmite Queen, or maybe the more accurate read is that the Glowmite Queen has lunar links. Yep. And I've talked about before that when the animus is kind of repressed or rejected by the person, by Marika, Jung says it will marry your shadow. Um, and again, like it's hard because shadow and Jung's kind of vernacular is used as kind of a blanket statement. Like there's so many things that shadow can be used for, but shadow in a wide net is just anything that is goes against the current world order. So that would be the moon, lunar magic, the academy, things like that. So the fact that Radigan, well, let's back up. So let's assume that Godfrey was the first stage of Marika's animus and all about strength, and that was pretty much it. Now, there's definitely more to his character, but I think the main thread that Miyazaki is trying to get to us is that his character is very singularly focused on physical strength. But then Marika just kind of, outcasts him. And I see this as Marika is repressing her animus. And then the second stage of that is Radigan, who is a war hero, poet, a little bit more evolved. But because he's repressed and not a part of Marika, he goes and marries her shadow, which I believe to be the marriage between Renala and Radigan. And I believe that's why they have red hair, because they are literally elements of kind of the shadow. And why they all are kind of a little bit off, I would say. But to me, that really tells the story of Radigan and Renala, because at surface, like, there's so many questions and variables that it could be, right? Like, did Marika do this? Was she Radigan at that point? Is it a strategic thing? Did Radigan actually fall in love with Renala? All these different variables, which is just a kind of an empty, like, you're just pulling on a thread, forever in that kind of train of thought. At least, again, these are all just my personal opinions. But I agree with you, Race. That's basically what I'm trying to say. I agree. I feel like the story of Marika is being told in so many different ways. In that, like Renala's case, for example, she was once a powerful queen. She had some sort of trauma, and now she is kind of just this husk of her former self, locked away in her former place of power. That's the same exact story of Marika. That seems to be the same exact story of the Glomide Queen, which is why I often connect these figures and say that they are like projections of Marika. Like, we're getting Marika's story told through us through so many different avenues. That, yes, of course, they are, in a lore sense, they have their own kind of channel, right? But I think in a grand scheme of things, like, they are all telling the same story. My reasoning for Mesmir not being the final boss is that they usually don't show that in trailers. Yep, I totally agree. I think that we're still missing a big kind of like surprise, and I really hope that it's the Glomide Queen. I think it would make for such a cool fight. Trio for Renala and the Carians being explored in the DLC, even though it doesn't seem to be main focus. They're your favorites? Yeah, they're. I mean, there's definitely an element, right? I mean, there's definitely a shadowy version of it. So we'll get a good idea. Yeah. Pair each butterfly we see in Elden Ring directly. I can't see much fit. Okay. One major required boss past Mesmir. Yep, totally agree. It works better if you consider the animus as a broad category. The 4 stages are aids in differentiating the anima to make conscious function. The Cuckoo Knight's forces that are attacking Renala and Moongrum uses sleep. I mean the 2 crabs. Which makes me think we'll be getting more about the cuckoos who rebelled after Renala's fall. That'd be cool. I would assume we see these Serpent's quarter aspect of the self. If there's anything beyond Mesmir, so Phys nature, draconic, yep. It just occurred to me, could Torrent be a part of Miquella? He's our guide and helper after all. Yeah, that's a neat idea. Um, as far as I can tell, a very strong linking factor to Night Sky slash Nox slash Newman group is all mistype spells. They all seem to share a common root, which also includes Bewitching Branch. Torrent resembles ancestral spirits a lot. Cherub version of them. My assumption would be that Miquella's shadow is unlinked somehow, since the notion is that shadows provide substance and their absence results in being a spirit, or at least pale and fragile. Yeah. Yeah. Pro Dragon's Dogma 1 rule. Guidance of Grace fits Jung's idea of psychic energy. If directed towards or away from the center of the self in a cycle, we are seeing the return. The mother motif. You guys ready to play Dragon's Dogma? Okay. We got it, Alex. What bothers me, among other things, Turtle Pope said that if you break your vow, you will suffer for that, and yet the one who suffered was Renala, even though it was Radagon who left her. Yeah. But again, like, it's hard because if you're looking at it just as them two through kind of a blinder tunnel vision, then yeah, it's confusing. But if you extrapolate their story into the main story of the Erd Tree and the Shadow Tree, right, and basically the vow that was broken, right, the war that took place was this vow, right, the fracturing of things accepted and things rejected. Now, on one, for a short period, it seems like one is definitely the victor in that war, right? But as kind of Blaze is saying, that if you don't have the roots to a tree, that tree will stand for a while, but eventually it's going to tip over. And I think but the immediate suffering comes from the rejected, right? But eventually, both sides of this broken vow kind of pay the price until that vow is rejoined or is mended. So that's kind of the way that I see it. Is it's a smaller version of the bigger story being told. Um, yeah, Kari Knight being in front of the moon. Yep. How ironic. The gear on the new troops shown in the trailer and the gear of Malekith look quite close. Maybe some type of American Newman allied faction. This is not my first playthrough. No, I just haven't played it in a while. The way that I take in the kind of black armor with gold accents seems to be again kind of the whole story being told, where it's like underneath the surface is the shadow, but it's wearing like a golden crown, and you see this in Stormveil too, where it's a black castle, but it's got elements of gold to it, and that's kind of the way that I see Malekith's armor. And there's a lot of armor where it's like it's this division between black and gold, or black and white, or gold and silver.
Upon the cliff in Castle Stormvale is a shard bearer, a demigod.
followed you while I'm being difficult.
The shattered Elden Ring. If theories of grace signal the path
So here's the thing: both Miquella and Malenia,
as an ally
Melina too, if you count her, all have features of lunar type symbolism.
to face the challenge
I've wondered if Radagon stole some of the essence from Renala. Yeah, I mean, he definitely learned sorcery from her, right? Like, he definitely took that with him from the academy. And it could be that he just kind of, yeah, like soaked up, stole her psychic energy, if you will.
Everyone's been grafted. Everyone who came with me. They crossed the sea for me. They fought for me. Only to have their arms taken. Their legs taken. Even their heads taken. Taken and stuck.
So Renala paid a personal price, and Radagon paid a metaphysical price.
You're grafted by the
I don't know. I mean,
It's quite a lark when you think about
to me, Radagon's not in great shape either.
You're all on your own, are you?
I think one is just more immediate, and the other seems to be more like a slow burn
One in the right matter.
kind of thing.
Well, you come to be one with the spider. Wow, that makes us two peas in a pod. But I don't have your courage.
I kind of theorize Radagon was sent to Renala in order to break her heart, in order to show the lines between how the Lunar Queen was in fact no champion, since her skills on the battlefield was unmatched and corrupted his Moonlight Greatsword. Would you be interested in a Queen Marika boss fight? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. But I think that we get that. I think that we get that with the Elden Beast.
I know.
I think the incantations that the Elden Beast does is Marika, like the more spiritual side of the syzygy that is Marika and Radagon. And I think Radagon is all about just the physical, the material, which is why he turns into a sword.
It was a pleasure to phone. Can tell them I love them. I'm finally getting the hang of it.
So I don't think that they'll do. I think that already happened. It just wasn't in like her human body form, I guess. What's up, bro? Oh god. Oh boy. Oh boy. Come on, man. Oh crap. Oh god. I was hoping for Marika to be the final boss, but was glad to see her becoming Radagon and avenge Renala. Radagon is Marika, so we already fought and killed her. Yep. But Shadow of the Erdtree set mid slash alongside the main game, so you could fight Marika, not kill her. Yeah, it's definitely possible. Again, I think the Glowmite Queen as being Marika's personal shadow. If we end up fighting her, it would be like fighting Marika herself. Just a different aspect of her. God damn it. I am not good at parrying. Oh, good God. Okay, alright. You win. You win. Oh, God, that's not good. Alright. Adios. I feel like this character is going to be weak for a while. Um, young Marika. Yep. Yeah, Aaron, I think you're correct in that. So here's like another kind of black beast is like the base of the armor, but it's got gold sprinkled into it. Um, yeah, I think uh, I've said this before too, but it seems that the little girl statue with the three wolves is the moment in time where Marika, as a girl, separated herself, um, and like that is where um, Malekith was basically born, and why he is stuck in that place. So it makes sense that there would be if the Glowmite Queen to be like a younger version of the Marika that we see. Bye. And I'm just gonna kind of play. Like I don't really have a, you know, I'm trying to do a certain quest or anything like that. So if there's things that you guys want to see or like um, some sort of aspect you want me to pull up and you know an item, just let me know and we'll chat about it. But otherwise, I'm just gonna kind of more or less play in the background as we just kind of chill and chat. Hell yeah, let's go. I appreciate that, man. Thanks for hopping on. Hello. Well, um, so Jones asked, "What's the connection between Miquella and the three wolves?" When when Wani, when Ronnie gives you the wolf as, good God, the wolves' ashes, she says they're from Torm's former master. So, based off of the DLC trailer, we know that Miquella is going to the Shadowlands to basically reintegrate that into the world, right? To bring the repressed, which is what he was trying to do with the Halog tree, to make a place united for all. And what's down there is the the more beastly, chaotic, rejected side of society of America. So him giving or having the three wolves is a red herring for what his purpose is. He is there to bring the shadows, the chaotic, repressed aspects back into the forefront, back into the fold of everyday life. Um, that's how I see his connection with the three shadows. Like, he only really has one purpose, it seems, and it's to bring the shadows back into the fold of the lands between. Um, so him having the three wolves, in my opinion, just a overt artistic expression of the overall shadow. Come on. Does this not work? Do I need something bigger? There we go. Do you have a theory on Divine Tower of, is it Ronnie's or Miquella's? I mean, the game definitely makes it seem like it's Ronnie's, um, because her body is up there. But Ronnie's two fingers are somewhere else, and she also seems to have a different rune that is on the moon. Miquella's, I don't think it's Miquella's, because I think Miquella also has a different rune, which is shown in the DLC trailer. I think it could be Mesmir's. I know that sounds weird, but like, think about the Divine Tower. So we invert it and we flip it upside down, right? It is in direct opposition to Malenia's, but then you would automatically think Miquella. Um, I'm not sure, because I get tons of shadow vibes from Liurnia and that Divine Tower. Like, it is clearly a place that is rejected by Lindell, and the fact that you invert the Divine Tower to get to there, um, it just seems awfully strange that that is basically what we're doing in the Shadow World. And if the theory of Mesmir being unborn, right, like either miscarriage or abortion or stillbirth or whatever, would explain that as well. So hopefully we'll get more information on that. But if I was gonna like just take a speculation on it, it would be Mesmir's. And if Mesmir is like the initial trauma that caused all of this stuff, it would make sense that Ronnie's dead body would be up there. Her being the one that is facilitating this process of exposing kind of the truth and releasing, um, and being the aspect that is releasing Marika from her old ways. I'd be curious to know your guys' thoughts, though.
Given to me by my mother inside the earth tree, long ago, for the reason that I yet live, birth and bodiless. There is something for which I must apologize. I've acted the finger maiden, yet can offer no guidance. I am no maiden. My purpose was long ago lost.
So, her dialogue, right, of mother and that her purpose was long lost ago, or long ago lost. Like, it has very similar themes of Mesmir, and I think that her purpose being lost happened back there, back in the Shadowlands, which is again when her beast eye was closed and all this different type of stuff. And she's just kind of wandering around the world. She doesn't really know her purpose. it's just it's interesting parallels with the new trailer. Oh, dude, you alright, dude? Come on now.
Oh, dear. You might, hey, terribly sorry. You here as a customer?
Don't really need any of this stuff, so I'll buy those.
I must have...
There's no mistake, is there? Death has left its mark once again. Ah, a tarnished, are you? I'm known as D. I hunt down those who live in death and weed their death root. Heed my warning. The village here has been touched by death. And worse yet, it is home to a mariner. If you value your life, then go no further. The village here has been touched by death. Turn back while you still can.
Also, the Godskin Noble and the bridge adds to the confusion, in my opinion. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if we'll get any more lore on the Divine Towers. It'd be really interesting. So D is like this perfect example of, in my opinion, the overall story being told. Like, the golden armor is like closing the eyes to the silver armor. And gold and silver, you know, in alchemy are opposites and are viewed as like the ego and shadow. What's really interesting to me is that it is the silver hand that is holding the sword, which I think beautifully mimics the story being told here in the Lands Between. Is that it may seem that this golden ego is in control, but it's the shadow that actually has its hand on the weapon, and we see that through Deathroot and things, you know, coming back to life and living in death, and all the other shadowy things that are taking place in the Lands Between, is because it's the shadow that seems to actually be in control now. And I think that his armor is really, really telling that story. I don't really want fight her. Let's go get... So many interactions and enemy placements are confusing as hell. I'm gonna die so fast to this guy. Nope. Ugh. Come on, bro. Where you at? Get him! Oh no. Oh. Can Yura even die in this? Come on, Yura. Woo! Guessing he's trying to keep you from getting the curse mark. But then why? Or maybe he was sent to retrieve it since its connections to my queen, the other Rune of Death connection is pretty much there. Yeah, I mean he is he's trying to stop anybody from getting their hands on the curse mark. That does not do as much damage as I was hoping for. Oh god. CT, my dad still calls me the N-word. What should I do? I don't know, man. Words only have power if you let them. The Crucible is not my favorite aspect of the lore, but I'm glad it seems to be main focus in the trailer. Let's hope we get a big surprise with Saint Trina and Glowmite Queen. Yeah. Yep, I think we will. I mean, the DLC sounds like it's going to be huge. So, and I think Miyazaki left enough breadcrumbs that it would be strange at this point if he didn't address those characters.
Wait, please! I surrender! White flag and all!
I was thinking Saint Trina could be the final boss of the DLC if Miquella is Marika 2.0. He too have a counterpart. Oh. Trying to keep him asleep. Should have given my guy red hair. I don't know what I was doing.
I assure you. Well, water under the bridge. Now we're squared up. How about you play nice from now on?
It would be interesting to see a Saint Trina fight.
A true man of reason. Just what I like about you. I'm Patches. Patches the untethered. Tarnished like you, only for that in exchange for my honesty and frankly. So I'll be ready to win. Don't forget, I'll be ready to...
Just joining the fray, Tarnish. Wow. Fulminarius, you survived. That alone deserves commendation. I'm Mora. Hunter of bloody fingers. Tarnished, held in thrall by cessblood. Zealots, who stalk their own, who stay the path. You're certain to face more of them. Just remember, no kinship with their ilk remains. Their madness precludes you.
Oh, Valmont, that would be sweet. I just don't see Miquella as having like any sort of like physical prowess, though. He just seems to he convinces other people to do it for him.
One last word of warning. Stay clear of the Gil Lake. The great dragon roosts there, and it's as fearsome as it is majestic. So, unless you're mad, or wish to be burned alive, stay clear of the lake.
His like little circle amulet there looks similar to the rune that is on Mesmir's kind of crest. was this called? Murkwater. Oh boy, I'm gonna get my ass rocked. I need something a little more beefy. Oh Jesus criminy. Oh boy. Oh! Oh my dear God. Just ignore that. That never happened. That did not just happen. Oh. This is gonna go poorly. Got one. Hello. Oh, what? Woo. I need a different weapon for these fellas. Nope. Nope. All right, whatever. We'll just come back. Let me see. Got a maiden, dude.
Grace's guidance will reveal the castle, the home of the decrepit demigod. It's time you set off to castles if you seek the Elden Ring. It's time to cast if you seek.
I think I'll leave it there for today. I don't know. I think he is a benevolent figure in the DLC. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I don't see us fighting Miquella. I don't think he fights at all. I think that's kind of his whole thing. But yeah, I'm gonna stop here for today. Let me know what you guys think. If this is worthwhile, or if you just want to have once a week streams where we just talk about lore and I don't play the game at all. I'm fine with either way. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, I have characters that are completely done with the game too. So if there's things we just want to look at, or if you want to just go from the very beginning and apply this lens to it from the very beginning, I'm cool with either. But anyways, guys,